do you guys think of that rock and roll music, right? Nothing like a little bit of elevator music. Folks, welcome to my live stream. My name is Jim, and I used to be a type 2 diabetic, and I love saying that I used to be a type 2 diabetic because I used to be one. I have reversed type 2 diabetes. I'm in remission from it. I don't take medications anymore. That's because my doctor told me I don't have to. So however you want to word it, I just don't have it anymore. And I love doing live streams and telling people exactly what it is that I do to achieve that. Now, I'm not really particularly fond of the word cure. I don't like that one so much, but I'm down for reverse, remission. We're just simply saying I don't have it anymore. I like that. And what I do is these live streams, and I tell people exactly what I do to achieve that. So here's the deal. If you've been invited to this live stream, it means that somebody that you know or care about thinks that the information that I'm going to share here could be a benefit to you. So give me your ear, lend me your ear. I'm trying to be pretty quick. I'm about an hour long. And I also try to be entertaining too. I try to throw out some information. I kind of like to think of this as like color by numbers, right? I'm going to start giving you some information. And at first you're going to be like blue 7. What does that mean? That's nothing, right? And then red 6. And it's not going to mean anything. But by the end of this hour, you're going to have a masterpiece and it will all be clear. Okay. So that's what we're going to be aiming for here. Just little bits of information that at the end of this hour, you can assemble and see the whole picture. So stick around. If at the end of this, you decide, hey, I think I want to go forward with this, just get with the person who referred you here and they'll tell you how to go forward with it. So without further ado, I talk about how did I reverse type 2 diabetes? Well, the first thing that I did was I focused on the problem. And the problem is something called insulin resistance. And that's kind of funny. Nobody ever told me about the word insulin resistance. I never heard that word before or that term before. And I think that's important because insulin resistance really is the root cause of type 2 diabetes. So what is insulin resistance? And let's really break that down. First off, everybody throw in the comments section where you're listening in from. Where are you tuning in from? And if you are also, I should add to this, if you are on these products and you absolutely love these products, share it out. This is a perfect time to share this out. If you're on Facebook with us, by the way, we're on like 15 different platforms right now. If you're on Facebook, just type the little @ symbol and type your friend's name. And eventually it'll populate their name, @ and then Dave. And as you start to type it, it'll populate their name, hit enter, and it'll populate it just like Stacy just did right there with Steve. Now, what's going to happen the next time that Steve logs into Facebook, he's going to see that and voila, done. So go ahead and tag your people in here. If you're on YouTube, just share this out. If you're listening to us on X, share this out, okay? Do that. Let's make an impact on people here. We're going to change the world. How are you, Sheena? Welcome. Also, feel free to ask questions. I do like to interact with the audience, and I love to interact with the audience and answer questions. So this is a very interactive live stream. Now, back to this. How did I reverse type 2 diabetes? Well, the first thing I did was focused on the problem. And the problem is something called insulin resistance. And it's really disappointing that nobody ever said that to me. Nobody ever said insulin resistance. I never, ever heard the term insulin resistance while I was a type 2 diabetic. And that's kind of crazy because it's what causes type 2 diabetes. And if you can reverse insulin resistance, well, then you can reverse type 2 diabetes. It's a completely reversible condition. It is not, in fact, a chronic and progressive disease. It is a reversible symptom. And I will explain that in this live stream. So let's go down this path. What is insulin resistance? And really to understand what is insulin resistance, we have to understand first what is insulin. So let's start there. What is insulin? And again, as a type 2 diabetic, nobody really ever explained that one to me either. And the only thing I really ever heard was a doctor pointing his finger at me, shaking his finger, saying, you're going to be a lifelong insulin dependent. That's what he did. He pointed at me. He says, you're irresponsible. You're making bad decisions, and you're going to be a lifelong insulin dependent because I had a 12.2% A1C. By the way, I now have a completely unmedicated 5.2% A1C, unmedicated for over 3 years. But that 12.2 really shook him up, and he was letting me know it. So what is insulin? we have to first understand insulin. Well, first off, insulin's a hormone. I don't know if you knew that or not. And in fact, it's not just a hormone. It is the most active hormone in your body. It literally touches every cell. Let me elaborate. One of the jobs of insulin is to regulate glucose. It helps control energy, places energy. It also stores fat. It's also a growth hormone. We're going to go into a lot of these details. So, excuse me. So, let's talk about it in terms of regulating glucose. So when you consume a carbohydrate, now that's something like a slice of bread or a cookie, something like that, your body converts that carbohydrate into sugar. Now, there are all kinds of sugar. There's sucrose. That's the type of sugar that you find on your table, the powdered sugar on your table. Granulated sugar, that's sucrose. Then you've got fructose. That's the kind of sugar that comes in an apple. And then there's lactose. There's allulose. I like to give the cheat code of allulose. Allulose is a real sugar. It's not a substitute sugar. It's a real sugar, but it does not affect your glucose. That's what we're going to talk a lot about tonight is glucose. It does not affect your glucose, but it does positively increase your GLP-1. And a lot of people are hearing the term GLP-1 today. There's a class of medications called glucagon-like peptide-1 receptor agonists, GLP-1 RAs, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Trulicity, Saxenda, Wegovy, Rybelsus, semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, liraglutide. There's so many of these, okay? They are GLP-1 RAs. They're receptor agonists. They are a synthetic form of a hormone that we're going to talk about called GLP-1. Well, allulose induces GLP-1 production. It's a good thing. It actually increases your GLP-1, but it does not affect your glucose. So if you're looking for a sweetener and you don't want one of the substitutes, the synthetic ones, well, allulose, it's a real sugar. It's not quite as sweet as sucrose, but it's still pretty sweet. About 1.5 to 1. It's a good little cheat code. And I digress. We'll move on. What we're talking about today is glucose, because glucose is what your cells use for energy. It's a special type of sugar that your body needs. Your cells need glucose. You have to have it, okay? Moreover, a perfectly regulated body, a perfectly regulated bloodstream would need about 1 teaspoon of sugar at any given moment throughout the day. 1 teaspoon. That's 1 sugar cube for your entire body. That's what it needs. What happens when we have more than that? And that's where the problem lies in. So let's just come back. You consume that carbohydrate, that slice of bread, the cookie, whatever it is, and your body converts it into glucose. The glucose goes out to the bloodstream, and that is what your cells use for energy. Now, the problem is the cell is locked. It doesn't just get the glucose. It has to be unlocked. And that is one of the roles of that funny little hormone called insulin. Insulin is secreted from the pancreas. So when there's glucose in the bloodstream, it signals the pancreas secrete the hormone insulin. Insulin goes out to the bloodstream. It reacts with the cell. It kind of unlocks the cell, and the glucose is able to be absorbed after that. It acts kind of like a gatekeeper or a key. I love saying it like that. It's kind of a gatekeeper or a key. It unlocks the cell. And when it does so, the glucose levels can begin to normalize in your bloodstream. So you get this little bump in glucose, and then the insulin unlocks the cell and the glucose begins to get absorbed. Voila. That is an absolutely perfect scenario. Now, Lord knows we live in an imperfect world, and I like talking about that. I don't really like talking about that, but let's just face it. Let's call a spade a spade. We're in an imperfect world. So what happens when imperfect happens? You consume the carbohydrate, the body converts it to glucose, the glucose goes out to the bloodstream, it signals the pancreas to secrete insulin, but nothing happens. The pancreas doesn't secrete anything. No insulin comes out. What happens when that happens? When insulin doesn't occur? Well, the glucose, obviously, the cells don't unlock, and so the glucose does not come down. In fact, it goes up. And then it continues to go up, and it continues to climb. And as it climbs, at some point, it becomes toxic, and it will kill the type 1 diabetic. That's what a type 1 diabetic's problem is. Their body doesn't produce the insulin. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum, the type 2. What is the difference between the type 1 and the type 2? Again, It's disappointing, but as a type 2 diabetic, I wasn't even really clear on the total difference between us. And you'd think that that would be the first thing they would teach a type 2 diabetic is what is different about a type 2 and a type 1? Well, the presence of insulin. That's what the difference is. So a type 2 diabetic, they consume the carbohydrate just like everybody else. The body converts it to glucose just like everybody else. The glucose goes out to the bloodstream just like everybody else. That signals the pancreas to secrete insulin. The pancreas does secrete insulin. The insulin goes out to the bloodstream, but the cell doesn't respond to it. The cell is resistant to the insulin. That's what insulin resistance is. The cell is resistant to the insulin. It does not unlock. Now, what happens? Well, a lot like the type 1 diabetic, the glucose levels obviously don't normalize because the cell isn't unlocked. Okay? The glucose begin to climb, just like that condition with the type 1. Okay, now what signals the pancreas to secrete insulin? That exact condition, rising glucose, hyperglycemia, elevated blood sugar, whatever you want to call it. That rising glucose is what tells the pancreas to secrete insulin. Well, the pancreas reacts. It says, oh, hey, there's more glucose. Let's put out more insulin. And so as you are becoming more and more and more hyperglycemic, you are also becoming more and more and more hyperinsulinemic. Elevated insulin. That thing right there, that hyperinsulinemia, elevated insulin is overwhelming the cell to the point that the cell becomes resistant. It stops responding. You know, I have a Super Bowl analogy. I used to play football. And imagine the Super Bowl, whether you're a football fan or not, just imagine the Super Bowl, right? It's the end of the game, the final drive, the final 1 minute of the game. This team's down by 5 and they are at the goal line ready to score. And this is going to put the championship in their hands. Can you imagine how loud the stadium would be? It would be so incredibly loud. The quarterback looks at the defense and says, wow, this is not the right play. I need to audible. I need to change the play. And the quarterback is trying to yell to the wide receiver who's way out there, 30 yards away, hey, there's a new play. There isn't a chance the wide receiver can hear him. That wide receiver can't. Heck, the center right in front of him can't hear him. Nobody can hear him because the crowd is so loud. That's what's happening here with your insulin. We are hyperinsulinemic, and that hyperinsulinemia is dulling the noise. Now, if the quarterback wanted to make it real easy to where he didn't have to yell, just, hey, man, we're changing the play. What would make that easiest? If we thinned the herd. If you kind of got rid of some of the noise, well, the quarterback would be able to, same thing here. If we want to resensitize the cell to the insulin, what we're going to do is thin the herd. We're going to talk in this live stream about something called insulin lowering strategies. We're going to work on lowering the insulin, and in doing so, we are going to resensitize the cell. It's fascinating, right? This is actually pretty easy. That's the other thing, is that this is really easily done. As I go through this live stream, you're going to hear things and you're going to say, yeah, I knew that. Again, color by numbers, right? Blue 7, red 6. All of a sudden, it's going to start to line up. You're going to be like, I knew that the entire time. I just haven't been doing it. Well, hopefully after this, you start doing it and you start getting healthier. Okay, so we've talked about what is insulin resistance, what causes insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia. And I just want to touch on something really, really quick. I'm going to be brief with this. I would be oversimplifying this if I said that hyperinsulinemia is the only thing that causes insulin resistance. And I certainly do not want to do that, okay? There are a lot of things that cause insulin resistance, a lot of things. And I'll touch on a couple of them. However, right out the gate, hyperinsulinemia is the biggest cause. You cannot have insulin resistance without hyperinsulinemia, and you cannot have hyperinsulinemia without insulin resistance. They start feeding each other. And now, as my good friend Kristen says, you're on this hamster wheel. You just want to get off. How do you get off? Boy, excuse me. Let me grab a drink of our tea. Okay. So, a couple of other things that cause insulin resistance. And I'm going to ask our audience here. We got quite a few people. By the way, we are on like 15 different platforms, as I said. In fact, give a shout out from which platform you're on. We see that Sheena is over on YouTube, Jennifer's on Facebook. Stephanie O'Brien is my mother on Facebook. Hi, Ma. Okay, so give a shout out where you're from. But let's talk about just a couple of other things that cause insulin resistance. Lack of sleep. How many of you struggle with a good night's rest? Okay, lack of sleep will play into this equation. Okay. Once we're done with this, once you've dealt with the hyperinsulinemia, and by the way, it's very easy, then we're going to start to address sleep. What can you do to improve your sleep? Maybe you can increase your magnesium intake. Maybe you can stop surfing the internet at 9 o'clock at night, right before you go to bed. Maybe you can eat dinner a little bit earlier. Don't eat right before you go to bed. Maybe you can read a book right before you go to bed. Start winding yourself down better, and you're going to get a better night's rest. Okay. Another thing that causes insulin resistance is stress. How many people listening to me right now have stress in your life? If you have stress in your life, just type in the comment section stress. I'm curious how many people have stress in their life. And let's just touch on this again really real quick. I'm going to be brief with this. If I could poll the world, if I could somehow get in front of 8 billion people on planet Earth and ask them what their biggest stressor is, what would that be? And I would be willing to argue that the top stressor is probably finances. Probably job, probably finances, somewhere in there. Is that fair to say? Now, again, I'm not going to be talking about finances in this live stream, but I want to just illustrate a point real quick. The most valuable thing that you have is your time. It is undeniably the most valuable thing you have, for the simple reason that you can't get back the time that you've lost, and you can't judge how much time you have in the future, right? It is the most valuable thing that you have. You literally can't recover the stuff that's lost, the stuff that's already gone, and you have no idea how much is in front of you. It's very finite. That's yours. It's the most valuable thing that you have. And if you are trading that with a company, and that company is giving you a stressful work condition and not compensating you fairly, they aren't giving you enough money for the most valuable thing that you have, then maybe you need to look at that. Maybe that is something that you'll need to do to improve the quality of your life, and start looking for a company that values yourself. Moreover, do you value yourself properly? I'll just leave it at that. I said I wasn't going to spend very long on it, and I'm not going to. I'm going to move on. So we've talked about what is insulin resistance, what causes insulin resistance. Hyperinsulinemia. That's what we're really focused on today. We're going to be hyper-focused on hyperinsulinemia. Okay. So with that in mind, what does insulin resistance cause? Now, of course, I start off this live stream with, I was a type 2 diabetic. I've reversed it. You know that I have reversed insulin resistance to the point that I've reversed type 2 diabetes. But is that it? Is that all that insulin resistance causes? No. This is, in Dr. Bickman's words, the greatest plague to humanity right now. This is the biggest problem in the world. And I want to talk about Dr. Ben Bickman. I just name dropped a dude, and you're like, who's that guy? Don't know who he even is. Let's go like this, okay? I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go over to Google, and I'm just going to bring up Dr. Ben Bickman. I'm just going to Google Dr. Ben Bickman. Who is he? Well, Google's AI, Dr. Ben Bickman, PhD, that's a person holding doctorate, don't know if you know that or not, is a prominent Brigham Young University professor and researcher focusing on metabolic health, specifically the role of insulin resistance in chronic disease and obesity. He wrote a book called Why We Get Sick. Guys, check out that book, Why We Get Sick. He also has a website called Insulin IQ. I highly, highly, highly encourage everybody become a member of Insulin IQ. This website will change your life. And I always like to add to this, I am not affiliated with this website. I'm not affiliated with Dr. Bickman. I'm just a huge fanboy. I would actually ask him for his autograph. I think I would. I've never asked anybody for their autograph. I would actually ask him for his. But he wrote a book called Why We Get Sick. You see it right here in front of me. Great book. It describes this problem in great detail. It will change your life. Beware, it actually might make you mad too. Once you start looking behind the curtain, it all starts to make sense. Okay, so we talked about what is insulin resistance. Now, let's talk about Dr. Bickman. This is his profile on Brigham Young University's website, BYU's website. You'll see that he is a professor of cell biology and physiology at BYU. Cell biology and this is what we're talking about, the reaction between insulin and cell. There are few people, if any, that understand this quite like he does. Now, you'll notice his research interests. The focus of my lab, which is the Laboratory of Obesity and Metabolism. Think about that statement. At BYU, they have a laboratory called the Laboratory of Obesity and Metabolism. Dr. Ben Bickman oversees that. This laboratory, they literally grow fat cells for a living. That's what they do. And then they study the disease that accompanies that increased fat cell growth. Now, Dr. Bickman did a video that I want to play for you really, really quick. It's fascinating, okay? This is Dr. Bickman on a podcast a while back talking about insulin and its role in fat development. Just check out this video.
And this will blow some minds. You cannot have a fat cell grow unless insulin is elevated. It is totally, completely, utterly impossible. Now, I know people want to say, oh, well, calories matter too. They do matter. But if you just take out that one single variable, if you deprive a fat cell of insulin, it cannot grow. 100% full stop. Take this from a guy who literally grows fat cells in my lab all the time. In a human model, you even see this. If you have a person with type 1 diabetes, they can eat 10,000 calories in a day. And all they do is skip an insulin injection and they will be as skinny as they want. In fact, this is so well known to that diabetic that it's a known eating disorder. It's more of a hormone disorder. But if they just skip their insulin injection, they'll be as skinny as they want. It's a condition called diabulimia. You only eliminate one single variable, the insulin. They cannot not only grow fat, they can't even hold on to it. So as much as calories matter, and they do, insulin is an absolutely necessary signal to tell the fat cell to grow.
How fascinating is that, right? That is absolutely crazy. Now back to Dr. Bickman's profile on BYU's website. The focus of my lab, the Laboratory of Obesity and Metabolism. This is a guy that quite literally grows fat cells for a living, but he cannot grow his fat cell without the presence of insulin. He needs the insulin. And because of that, he pays particular emphasis to the etiology of insulin resistance. In fact, Dr. Bickman, this is the world's top leader on this topic. If you just scroll down a little bit, you can see the courses that he's taught. Look at all these courses that he's taught. If you are a type 2 diabetic, I'm sorry, but if you are a type 2 diabetic, you probably see an endocrinologist, the study of hormones. Well, guess what? One of the courses that Dr. Bickman teaches at BYU is endocrinology. He's the one that teaches your doctor. Okay, that's what this guy does. So look at all these courses that he teaches. And then more than that, the publications, the scientific publications, these are just publications that Dr. Bickman has had. Obesity and glucose intolerance, right? Let's see. Obesity and metabolic disruption, insulin and dietary management. I mean, that's exactly what he does. In fact, Dr. Bickman has been published some 30 times, actually more than, on the topic of insulin resistance alone. He is the top guy in the world. Now, I beat this drum quite a bit, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to reference Dr. Bickman quite a bit throughout this, but I've asked, what is insulin? What is insulin resistance? What does insulin resistance cause? That's where I'm going with all of this. Now, from Dr. Bickman's website, Insulin IQ, I got this image right here. This came from Dr. Bickman's website. And so I want to ask everybody that's listening to me real quick. I'm going to read these off, these conditions here really quick. I'm just going to read these off. And if they apply to you or somebody that you know, just type me. Okay, one by one, I'm going to name these off. If they apply to you or somebody that you know, type the word me. Stroke, does that apply to you or somebody that you know? If so, type the word me. Heart disease, obesity, migraine headaches, dementia, osteoarthritis, childhood obesity, polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, fatty liver, arthritis, Alzheimer's disease, erectile dysfunction, sarcopenia, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. I want to throw in some other ones. Pre-diabetes makes total sense. What about skin tags? Those little tags on your neck or chest area, little flaps of skin? I thought they were genetic. Insulin is a growth hormone. They're caused by insulin resistance. What about the darkening or discoloration of the skin around your neck or chest area, your armpits? That is a condition called acanthosis nigricans. I'm going to give you a test later on pronouncing that one. Acanthosis nigricans, caused by insulin resistance. And then we could dig a little bit deeper. There's a Dr. Cynthia Calkin who's done a lot of research in the connection between insulin resistance and treatment-resistant bipolar disorder. That is absolutely fascinating. I've done posts on the connection between insulin resistance and schizophrenia. I've done posts on multiple sclerosis, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. In fact, Dr. Bickman would go so far as to say that if it wasn't something that was transmissible, like a cold or a flu, it probably has something to do with insulin resistance. And now we've unlocked Pandora's box. Now you can see Pandora's box and you start to open it and you realize, hey, wait a minute, all these things are caused by the same thing. And chances are you've never been taught that it is completely reversible. Insulin resistance is completely reversible. Now, not to say that ALS is completely reversible or autism. There's a big connection with autism and insulin resistance. Not to say that it's completely reversible, but insulin resistance is, type 2 diabetes is, obesity is, high blood pressure is completely reversible. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the root cause, which is insulin resistance. And what causes insulin resistance? Well, a lot of things cause it, as I mentioned, sleep deprivation and stress. But what we're going to focus on here is hyperinsulinemia, lowering our insulin lowering strategies. Okay, so with that being said, let me go ahead and turn this bad boy off. And what I want to do is I want to introduce you to somebody. Her name is Jennifer, and I absolutely adore Jennifer. I'm not going to tell too much about her story because I want her to tell the story. But this is somebody that I met by way of social media, and she has changed my life. And here she is. Hi, Miss Jennifer. Oh, you're muted, I think.
There we go.
There you go. Hi, Miss Jennifer. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Let's tell the audience your story. And I like to just ask, how did we meet? What was your health like when we met? And where are you at today with your health?
Well, I met you before you met me. I saw you on TikTok, of course. Never heard of insulin resistance before. Probably the algorithm of things that I was watching probably brought you to me. I was just learning about all of the misinformation from the medical field. And I probably, saw you talking about it and had no idea I even had it. I was pre-diabetic, probably borderline hypertension, cholesterol issues, probably morbidly obese. But really, my biggest frustration is I am a 20-year plus glaucoma patient. And I had glaucoma when I was 40. I was diagnosed at 40, and I've had a lot of surgeries on my eyes. I've got tubes in my eyes. I've had cataract surgery. And because of the glaucoma, I retired early because I didn't want to sit and look at a screen the rest of my life. So I went ahead and stopped working. And, with all the extra time on my hands, I just started researching. I had a lot of inflammation in my eyes. And that's really what was my biggest frustration, because I can't tell you how many doctors I went to trying to figure out what the problem was. And no one could tell me. So I saw you, one day talking about insulin resistance, and of course, saw the little graphic that you just put up. And that is me. That is me. And I listened to every time I saw you, I would listen to you. And of course, I did my due diligence and went online and, read about the products and told my husband, I know I've just retired, but can I spend $159 a month on this product? He said, you do what you need to do. So I did. I've been on the product for about 18 months and it has completely changed my life. Completely. I'm a new person. I'm lighter. I'm 60 pounds lighter. I'm no longer pre-diabetic. Actually my pressures have come down. Now, granted, I've already lost some sight, and that of course hasn't come back, but my pressures are down, and that's most important because it's not going to hopefully, get any worse than it already is. Um, I just have so much energy. Um, my my cholesterol numbers are better. My I'm no longer pre-diabetic, 5.2 A1C, and I'm really, really proud of my insulin level. Last time I got it checked a few weeks ago was at 4. It started out in the 20s, and I'm now at 4. So,
Insulin lowering strategies
yes,
from 20
yes.
to 4.
I never, ever thought I could fast. Never. I mean, this has truly been the easiest change I have ever done for myself. So yeah, I'm a new person, and I've got my husband on it. I've got my son on it. I tell everybody about it. I just can't believe that I could ever feel this good again. And I don't have the stress. Fortunately, I don't have the stress anymore of going to work. I had a very stressful job, and I don't have that stress anymore, thankfully. So that does help. That does help. But yeah, I've totally changed the way we eat. I'm constantly moving around. Um, I feel decades younger.
You're doing everything now. You start with the big one, deal with the big one, and then start addressing the other ones
Yes,
in session. Just deal with them one by one, chip away at the mountain. But overall, dealing with this hyperinsulinemic condition, I say it's relatively easy. I mean, you have to put a lot of legwork in. You got to put a lot of shoulder into it, right? You have to try hard. You have to be consistent.
you do. Consistency is the key. But I guess if you're bound and determined, once you start to feel better, that just gives you the motivation to keep going.
Our good friend Ro, who's in the comment section, says um, the results are addicting, and I love
They
that.
are.
The
They
results are
are.
addicting. You start to win, and you want to just keep on winning. You want to do what you're willing to put. Once you start to get a W under your belt, you want to just try a little bit harder to get the next W. And all of a sudden, you're like,
Yes.
hey, I guess I can adjust my diet a little bit. And all of a sudden, it's not being strong armed into eating better. It's like, hey,
No.
I can see the win. I'm actually getting wins. I want to do this. Right. And maybe you want to
Exactly.
start exercising. That's something I never wanted to do. Now I actually enjoy getting out and
Yeah.
exercising. My exercising, my powerlifting days were way in my past. I thought it was done, but I actually enjoy getting out and working out now. I enjoy getting out and exercising.
Yes,
So I think
definitely.
one thing leads to another. It's an open door thing. You get your foot through the door and you start going to the next win. Jennifer, I
Yes.
absolutely love your story. I want to say that you started to get me teared up there.
I'm sorry. I can't tell it without crying. I think I cried the last time I was on with you, but it's just so life-changing. It really is.
Um, okay. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Normally, I ask people if they'll stick around till the end of the live stream. I think I'm going to change that up a little bit. What I will ask you to do, though, is you've got a bunch of people that are inevitably skeptical watching me right now, watching us. 30 seconds. What do you say to that person?
I say, just do it. You may not realize how badly you feel until you start to feel better. You just let tomorrow be the first day of the rest of your life and make it a healthy one. It's just never too late. It really isn't. I mean, I wish I would have done it at 40 and not 60, but it's never too late.
Dr. Bickman said, no matter how far gone you think you are, you can always reverse insulin resistance.
Yes, definitely.
Jennifer, you are absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for joining me on this live stream. Thank you for yanking a tear out of me. I'm like trying to keep myself controlled here. You are amazing. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jim.
And thank you very
I
much.
appreciate you too.
You're a rock star.
Take care.
See you, Jennifer.
Bye.
What do you think of that? Huh? That is just powerful, right? Okay, so let's get into this. I want to talk about some of the science because it's one thing. You've heard me describe insulin resistance. What does it cause? Okay, and you've heard now somebody tell you an absolutely amazing, powerful testimonial. Let's get into the products. How do the products work? First off, we have 2 great products, 1 great practice. Let's talk about the practice to begin. And all of this is centered around lowering the insulin lowering strategies, right? How are you, Angela, by the way? I see you. Insulin lowering strategies. How does this work? Let's talk about the practice. The first practice, as Jennifer was describing there, was intermittent fasting. She didn't think that she could do that, nor did I. And if you don't feel like you can do it, don't worry, you're not alone. Most people don't. In fact, when I would think about intermittent fasting, I always thought about Gandhi for some reason and like doing 30 days with no fast or with no food. I'm like, I don't want to do that at all. That's zero interest to me. Well, good thing that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about that. We're talking about skipping breakfast, something that is completely achievable. Okay, so let's just start there. When we skip breakfast, what happens? Let me just back this up a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about types of fasting. That's what I want to do. Okay. I want to talk about time-based eating, time restricted eating, that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our eating patterns to a clock. We're going to become somewhat regimented there. We're going to say that, okay, between the hours of noon and 8, that is our eating window. From the hours of 8 p.m. until noon the following day, we are in a fasted state. We're not eating any food. Water's fine. Coffee's fine. Black coffee's fine. Tea is fine. Obviously, Unamate is wonderful. Sparkling water is fine. No sugars, no food. That's what we're doing. Okay. So let's build on this a little bit. And by the way, this is completely customizable. If you work the graveyard shift and you're like, well, I don't want to fast during those. Well, that's fine. Just move the clock around so that it fits you. What you want to do is set your fasting schedule around your sleep schedule. Okay. Knock out a bunch of your fast during your sleep. Why not do that? So for most people, 8 p.m. will start the fast. That's when they're done eating. Fast forward 16 hours, that's noon, they can break their fast. Now, what that really means is they're skipping breakfast. Have your coffee in the morning. Have your Unamate in the morning. I'm going to go into great detail about the Unamate and how it actually makes fasting easy. But what we're doing during this time frame is because we're not eating, we're not getting glucose spikes, okay? And so when you don't get the glucose spike, then obviously you do not get the insulin response. And so what's happening is your glucose levels just naturally begin to decline. They normalize on their own just by skipping a meal. Now, if you remember Dr. Bickman, what he was saying there, in the presence of insulin, the fat cell must grow. In the absence of insulin, the fat cell must shrink. Well, what's really happening here? As the glucose levels normalize, there isn't the need for all of that insulin in the bloodstream. So that hyperinsulinemic state begins to normalize as well. And as the insulin comes down, remember Dr. Bickman saying, not only in the absence can it not grow, it can't retain the fat. It has to release the fat. And so what happens then is the fat cell begins to shrink and that fat gets converted to energy. And that's what you use for energy in the place of glucose. So really, insulin is now telling your body which energy source to use. So I mentioned glucose or insulin it helps regulate blood glucose. But really what it does is it places energy within your body. It tells your body which energy to use, glucose or fat. Okay. And when we're always eating, our insulin is chronically elevated. We're always storing fat. As the insulin level begins to decline, the fat cell begins to shrink and our body starts converting that to energy. That's what it's there. That is why we have fat. Think about a bear. What does a bear do? It gets fat during the fall so that it can live off of that fat, that added energy source while it hibernates. We're no different. Our fat is there for the exact same reason. It's there for times of famine. We just never tap into that fat source because we're always eating. So what we're going to do is skip breakfast. Now, between the hours of 8 and say 8 a.m., 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., your glucose levels are declining. And at about 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, they're at the rock bottom. And as they hit the rock bottom, guess what? The insulin hits the rock bottom and says, okay, we're done burning glucose. We're going to burn fat now. And you start seeing that waistline begin to shrink. How many of you want to see the waistline shrink? How many of you want to see that? You want to start looking good in the swimsuit? It's March. A couple of months, you're going to start looking good in that swimsuit by just using the fat for energy. Okay, so that's really what's happening. Now at noon, we can break our fast. We're gonna start eating again. Now, are we gonna graze? Are we gonna just snack all the way through for 8 consecutive hours? No, we're gonna have 2 meals, no snacks. Now, I don't like to talk about calorie restriction, and obviously calories matter. Chances are this is going to be a bit of a transition period to go into the fasting thing. I promise you it will get easier. It gets easier. From somebody who didn't think they could ever fast to somebody who probably feels the same way, it gets easier. And in fact, there's some science behind that. It has to do with leptin signaling being restored as you become more insulin sensitive. That's for another conversation, but it actually does get easier. So as you do this, you're going to see the fat shrink. And as the insulin is down, well, guess what's happening? We are resensitizing the cells to the insulin. We are actively reversing the insulin resistance. How wonderful is that? It is just doing so many amazing things. So many amazing things. So we're going to talk about a minimum of 16 and 8 time-based eating. Now, if you're eating breakfast, well, you're no longer eating breakfast. What does breakfast cost? I would argue you cannot go through McDonald's for less than $5. It's impossible. In fact, I would think it's hard to go through Starbucks for less than $5. It's hard to go through Dunkin' Donuts, if you can at all, go through those for $5. All of that added money, it's just going into your back pocket. That's what you're doing. You're just putting that money back into your back pocket. We're going to use that money for the next step, okay? So this is going to become a cost-neutral program by way of that. Okay, so we've talked about what is insulin resistance, what causes it, what does it cause, and we've talked about intermittent fasting and how it actively helps us reverse the insulin resistance, shrink the fat cell. So many wonderful things come from that. Now let's talk about the products. There are 2 products. I mentioned 2 great products, 1 great practice. We've talked about the practice. Now we're talking about the 2 great products. The first of the 2 products is called Unimate. Okay, now Unimate is available in 3 different caffeinated flavors right now: lemon, lemon ginger, and raspberry pomegranate. I love all 3 of them. Lemon is the most neutral flavor there is. It kind of tastes like an Arnold Palmer. Okay, lemon ginger tastes like an Arnold Palmer with real gingerol. It's got a little bit of a kick. If you like ginger, which I do, I could drink this all day long. If you don't like ginger, let's talk about the lemon because the ginger kicks, okay? And then there's raspberry pomegranate. That's a seasonal flavor. It's not going to be out forever, but it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. In fact, if you have a soda making machine, one of the carbonated water things, drink this one cold and carbonated. It's amazing. Okay, so those are the caffeinated flavors. And if you are caffeine sensitive, there are 2 other flavors. There is lemon decaf and there is chocolate decaf. So if you find yourself having a sweet tooth at night and you want something, chocolate, mint chocolate brownie. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay, enough about that. But let's talk about what is yerba mate. To understand yerba mate, we have to first understand yerba mate. So yerba mate is a South American tea. It's been pretty widely consumed for the last 500 to 1,000 years, give or take a few, right? Now, the indigenous people of the regions of South America that are now Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, parts of Uruguay, they would say that yerba mate gave them an amazing boost of energy. It gave them satiety, mental clarity, all sorts of wonderful things. Well, there's something inside of yerba mate that does that. And that something is called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid is a naturally occurring polyphenol. We find it in vegetation. Now, by that, I mean it's in fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, teas, coffees, but it's exceptionally abundant in yerba mate. Now, there are all sorts of benefits to chlorogenic acid, and I want to go through and just show a few of them right here. So this is just a Google search asking Google, does chlorogenic acid reverse insulin resistance? That's what we're talking about, insulin resistance. Well, this right here, just their AI says, yes, chlorogenic acid has been shown to improve and help reverse insulin resistance. Now, scroll down a little bit and you will see all sorts of research done on this. This first one, and by the way, that is a .gov address. It's an official website of the United States government. Use of chlorogenic acid against diabetes mellitus. Click that link and read it. You will have done the research. The next study down, roles of chlorogenic acid on regulating glucose and lipids metabolism. How many of you struggle with cholesterol regulation? You're concerned about cholesterol. That study right there will tell you how it helps with lipids regulation, as well as glucose. The next study down, chlorogenic acid improves glucose tolerance, lipids regulation. The next one down, anti-diabetic and anti-lipid. Okay, guys, you get the hint. There's a lot of research around chlorogenic acid and reversing insulin resistance. Okay, so click on those links, read them, and then when you say, hey, I've done the research, you'll be able to actually have done the research. That's what that is. Now, go to Google again and just ask Google, what foods have chlorogenic acid? Chlorogenic acid is a potent antioxidant polyphenol found abundantly in plant-based foods, with green coffee beans being the richest source. I want to emphasize that. Green coffee beans are the most abundant resource on Earth, okay? Key food sources include coffee, fruits, vegetables, vegetation, okay? Chlorogenic acid. Now, let's start looking at some of the research. This study right here looks at the effects of chlorogenic acid on blood pressure. How many of you struggle with your blood pressure? If you do, this study right here concluded the evidence from published randomized clinical trials suggests that chlorogenic acid intake causes statistically significant reductions in systolic and diastolic blood pressures. Boom. That is very, very compelling. If you are on metformin, this next study will be very interesting to you because chlorogenic acid acts in a very similar way to metformin. This study right here, chlorogenic acid improves glucose tolerance. That's a problem, glucose tolerance. Lipids metabolism, cholesterol. Inflammation. Chlorogenic acid is an anti-inflammatory. How many of you struggle with inflammation? Now, this study, in the current study, diabetic mice were administered chlorogenic acid or metformin, one or the other, side-by-side comparison, chlorogenic acid versus metformin. And look at the results. The results showed that chlorogenic acid decreased body weight, so it aided in weight loss, and improved glucose tolerance and insulin resistance. That's what we are trying to do. And these effects were similar to those of metformin. So you might hear people go so far as to say this is like an all-natural metformin. We're not gonna go out and tell you, hey, tell your doctor I'm taking this, but hey, that's compelling. This was a side-by-side comparison, chlorogenic acid next to metformin, and these effects were similar to those of metformin. Now, here's another study that says chlorogenic acid is a novel insulin sensitizer that potentiates insulin action similar to the therapeutic action of metformin. There it is again, similar to the therapeutic action of metformin. Now, this study right here, this is where it gets really, really fascinating, right? We talked about glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, and GLP-1 receptor agonists, the synthetic form of the hormone. Your body produces GLP-1. Well, this study right here looks at chlorogenic acid, and they found, indeed, there is recent evidence that coffee increases production of the incretin hormone, glucagon-like peptide 1. Coffee. Remember, coffee bean, the green coffee bean was the most abundant resource on Earth when it came to chlorogenic acid. And coffee induces GLP-1. Now, I want to talk about this guy right here. This is Dr. Andrew Huberman. And if you're familiar with him, wonderful. If you aren't, Dr. Huberman is a professor of neurobiology. He's a brain scientist at Stanford Medicine. He hosts a podcast called Huberman Lab. Now, this guy is fascinating. In fact, that's the #1 ranked health-related podcast in the world. And I always like to go through his educational background. Look at this stuff. Bachelor's from University of Cal Santa Barbara, his master's from Cal Berkeley, his PhD from Cal Davis, and then his postdoctorate work came from Stanford. This guy is quite literally brilliant. I mean, he is super, super smart. Now, why do I bring up Dr. Huberman? Well, Dr. Huberman was on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's been a number of years ago, and I know that Rogan could be controversial. I don't care. He's done the same thing on other talk shows as well. But I really like what he says right here. Please listen to the message where he talks about yerba mate inducing GLP-1.
You know, you were talking about people won't do the thing. Right now, there's a lot of excitement about semaglutide.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a GLP-1 glucagon-like peptide. The story of that is, since you like animals and the natural world, a guy down in South America was looking at Gila monsters, those really scary things, and he realized they don't have to eat very often. I wonder if they're hungry all the time or not. Turns out it takes their blood, isolates a peptide, which turns out to be GLP-1, puts it into other animals, and realizes it suppresses appetite. Amazing, right? Like this is what I love about biology. Some dude who studies Gila monsters. Turns out humans make GLP-1. GLP-1 is stimulated by things like yerba mate tea.
Yerba mate tea.
Certain other compounds, plant compounds, stimulate its release. But what does it do in the hypothalamus? It suppresses hunger by way of, there's a particular brain arcuate pathway, blah, blah, blah. But it also affects the mechanosensors of the gut so that you feel like your gut's full. Like it's almost like you're getting like a pharmacologic tummy, stapled stomach, right? So when people take a drug that mimics GLP-1, their brain is like, well, I'm not as hungry, and their stomach feels full even though it's empty. And so people lose weight.
How interesting is that? Now, let's talk about Unimate, okay? Unimate, now we're over here. This is the product guide from Unicity on Unimate, and we're going to start talking about what is the difference between Unimate and yerba mate. Well, first off, Unicity owns the yerba mate fields in South America. They actually own the farm fields there. And that's important because they could try some sort of GMO experiment and grow it in Utah, but that just doesn't work. There's a thick red clay-like soil in the regions of South America that are Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and parts of Uruguay. That thick red clay-like soil, when paired with that dense rainforest climate, that really is the only place that this plant will grow. Now, they hand harvest it. And that's not just anybody that hand harvests it. It takes a trained eye, a trained farmer. He knows when it's time to hand harvest the leaf. And they do. And I say that because they're not machine harvesting it. Now, once they've got the leaf, they fire roast it in a very similar way to the way that it's always been done. But then they stop the traditional process and they extract the things like chlorogenic acid. They extract other things like theobromine, which I haven't really talked about theobromine. Maybe I'll go into a deep dive on that next week. But theobromine, if you know anybody that has gout, theobromine stops the crystallization of the uric acid at the surface of the skin. It also helps inhibit the growth of uric acid kidney stones. Gout people on this product see absolute relief. Gout is also caused by insulin resistance. So there are a ton of things. In fact, if you've ever been told to eat dark chocolate because it'll make you happy when you're sad, well, that's theobromine. So Unicity also extracts theobromine alongside chlorogenic acid and the mate saponins and the antioxidants, and then they concentrate that. They ramp it up. And so what they end, and then they purify it. I forget, they purify it. They look for 26 different ingredients to pull out. Things like heavy metals and pesticides, they get those out. And then they flavor it with lemon rind or lemon rind and gingerols, real natural flavoring. And then they sweeten it with plant-based stevia. This is an all-natural plant-based drink. And what they end up with is a drink that has about 20 times the chlorogenic acid of a typical cup of yerba mate. So this is not like the other stuff you see in the store. This is about 20 times as potent as the other products out there. In fact, it's about 10 times as potent as a green coffee bean. That's as a typical cup of coffee. That is amazing. In fact, I'm unaware of anywhere else on earth where you're going to find as concentrated chlorogenic acid as you'll get right here. Okay, so to that point, let's talk about some research that has been done on this. This study right here, published in October of 2023, looks at a yerba mate supplement. Guess which one? Unimate. And you will notice Dr. Ben Bickman on the research. This was under his watchful eye. Dr. Bickman has now published peer-reviewed research on Unimate. And where I'd like to go, we'll just scroll down here a little ways and we'll look at the materials and methods. The mate was from Unicity International. Now, what this study really showed was, and Dr. Bickman explains it best. He says, imagine parking your car in your driveway. If you parked your car in your driveway and just started revving up the gas, you would never do that because it would just be wasting fuel. It would be a very inefficient thing, right? Well, guess what? Unimate kind of does that with your fat. It kind of just makes your body rev up. That's the mitochondria. It kind of revs up the mitochondria of your cell, and they start burning more. Easier. This study is peer-reviewed proof that that happens. Now, in addition to this, Dr. Bickman, after he published this, he went on to a podcast, and he was talking about this very topic. And the conversation of Unimate, Unicity's Unimate came up. And in that study, or in that thing, he actually mentioned Unimate increases GLP-1 production by up to 70% during a fasted state. And I'm just going to say that one more time, and then I'm going to play it for him to say for you. But Unimate increases GLP-1 by up to 70% during a fasted state. World's top metabolic scientist right here.
March in Las Vegas is that this yerba mate supplement called Unimate also increases GLP-1. We found in this experiment we did, the GLP-1 levels went up by about 70% in a fasted state, which is pretty considerable.
Look at that. The world's top metabolic scientists saying that, hey, not only does this thing make you a more efficient fat burner, peer-reviewed published research, but it also increases your GLP-1 by up to 70%. You just heard him say it. So how does this work? Well, first thing in the morning when you wake up, we are going to drink a Unimate. By the way, it costs $2.25. And I'm going to go into more detail about that, but it costs $2.25. We drink 2 of them per day. You spend $4.50 on some quality drinks that are going to give you amazing boosts of energy. They're going to help with mental clarity. They're going to help with appetite suppression. If you're fasting, these will get rid of the food noise. They make fasting easy. If you've ever tried fasting and you find yourself staring at the clock, waiting for the fast to end, these help. They will help there. Treat them like the meal, like a meal replacement. Okay. I drink mine hot in a 30-ounce tumbler like this. I have found that when I drink it hot, it makes me sip it. And I like to sip on this. You want to sip on it. You don't want to chug it. You'll get the benefits. They'll be more pronounced when you sip on it. So what I do, the very first thing in the morning, I wake up, literally the first thing that I do is I go to my hot water kettle and I make myself one of these. It's literally the first thing that I do. Now, when this one's gone, it takes about 2 to 2.5 hours to drink that one. When it's gone, I drink my second one, just back to back. What you're going to find, appetite suppression, enhanced mood, that mental clarity, the brain fog is just lifted. What's really happening in the background is you are lifting your GLP-1. You are making yourself a better fat burner. You are actively reversing insulin resistance. Okay. So that is the science behind it. Now let's get into the second product. And I'm trying to hit the gas pedal here a little bit. I know that I go a little bit long, but I really like to provide a lot of information. So let's get into the second product. The second product is called Balance. Now, to talk about balance, I really kind of have to start with a product called BioSlife. Now, this product right here, BioSlife, was developed by Rexall Pharmacy. You'll see it right there, right? Rexall Pharmacy in the late 80s. This thing's been around for nearly 40 years, quite a while. Now, what happened in the 80s was Rexall Pharmacy saw that, hey, there were all of these companies coming out with these fiber supplements, Metamucil and Benefiber, and all these companies were coming out with these things. And they thought, hey, we should do that too. But what could we do that made us unique? Well, Metamucil is psyllium husk. Wheat dextrin is Benefiber, right? And they're single source fiber supplements. What Rexall thought was, what if we had a blend of fibers? What if it wasn't just one type? What if it was a diverse blend and each individual fiber did something like reduced LDL, reduced triglycerides, was shown to improve glucose tolerance? What if each fiber kind of did something unique? And what if we put those all together? Now, at this same exact time, there were all these multivitamins coming out, Centrum, Flintstone vitamins in the 80s. Maybe you remember this. And they thought, hey, what if we could just put that together? Would it increase compliance? Would people do both of them together and just, you got one-stop shopping instead of multiple? And so what they did was they put the two together. The idea was this thing was going to help with cholesterol regulation and body weight. That was the goal. And then it worked. Okay. But there were other things that happened that not even they were expecting. So that thing, that fiber and multivitamin blend, the blend of 7 different plant-based fibers, plus that multivitamin. If you're vitamin B deficient, this is a full vitamin B, B6, B9, B12. It's 1,040% of your B12. It's 410% of your B6. It's 90% of your daily folate equivalent. It's amazing. Riboflavin, niacin, thiamine, chromium, zinc, vitamin C. It's the full multivitamin, all in one, paired with this blend of fiber. Now, this thing right here was groundbreaking. And by 2002, it caught the attention of the Cleveland Clinic. Now, why do I bring up the Cleveland Clinic? Let's just go right here. I'll share this page here. This is our friend Google. And I just asked Google, what is the top heart hospital in the United States? And Google immediately said the Cleveland Clinic. See, most people in the medical profession would consider the Cleveland Clinic to be the top heart hospital in the United States, if not the top heart hospital in the world. This is the place to go if you've got a heart condition. Now, the reason I bring that up is this study right here. This was published in, you'll notice, September of 2002. It looked at a fiber and multivitamin combination therapy. What they were trying to do was figure out, was this actually a beneficial influence on LDL and homocysteine? Now, if you want, you can just click this link right here, and it will take you to the actual published study in Metabolism Journal. This is what they call a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial. It was peer-reviewed, it was published, and you'll notice right here, this bad boy's been cited 20 times. This is very, very, very compelling research. If you wanted to read the entire thing, you could click that download full issue, or you could go to unicityscience.org. Here is that study in full. fiber and multivitamin combination therapy. As we scroll down, you will notice from the preventative cardiology section of the Cleveland Clinic, Cleveland, Ohio. This was submitted November 15, 2001, accepted February 14, 2002, and published in September of 2002. And if we just scroll down, you'll notice the fiber tested was BIOS Life 2. Remember this thing right here? Remember this packet right here? Fiber by Rexall Sundown out of Boca Raton, Florida. That's what they looked at. And if you're concerned about your LDL cholesterol, well, they addressed that in this research. This line right here says a lot. By the time of the interim visit, which was 4 weeks after randomization, the treatment group demonstrated significantly lower LDL-C than the placebo group, and that trend continued through the next 4 weeks to the end of the blinded phase. That is amazingly powerful. That is amazing. This thing actually works. And if you want to know what significantly lower LDL looks like, just scroll down a little bit and you can read their numbers. These numbers are from the Cleveland Clinic. Dude on TikTok, not your friend who referred you here. This is from the top heart hospital in the United States, suggesting that, hey, this stuff right here causes a significant reduction in your LDL cholesterol. Now, let's just keep building on this. LDL cholesterol, a lot of people are concerned about their LDL cholesterol, and they get onto a statin medication like atorvastatin or rosuvastatin or simvastatin or Lipitor, Crestor, Zocor, any one of these statin medications. If we understand that this right here is something that we do not want, we don't want insulin resistance, I want to point out this study right here. This study assessing, this is, by the way, this is an official website of the United States government. Again, it's pubmedcentral.gov address, published in July of 2023. Assessing the link between statins and insulin intolerance. This is a systematic review. That means they kind of looked at all of the research. Statins and insulin intolerance. Do statin medications cause insulin resistance? Do the statin medications, rosuvastatin calcium, atorvastatin calcium, do they cause this? Boy, wouldn't that be diabolical? Let's go down and look. Let's just see what they came up with. The included studies had a total of 46,728,889 participants. These findings suggest that the use of statins is associated with a decrease in insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance. This systematic review provides evidence that the use of statins may have an adverse effect on insulin sensitivity and increase insulin resistance. These findings may have important clinical implications for individuals on statin therapy, especially those at risk of developing diabetes. So wait a minute. Statin medications cause insulin resistance? That's what that looks like. Statin medications cause this? Okay, now let's go back over to this study from the Cleveland Clinic. Again, America's top heart hospital. Remember when they were studying this product? Guess what they said about it? Such a product, if taken regularly, could reduce cardiovascular risk on a population basis and potentially decrease the need and or dose for lipid-lowering prescription drugs. And I like to break that sentence down because that's a little bit of a mouthful. Such a product. They were talking about BIOS Life. If taken regularly, could reduce cardiovascular risk. That's heart disease. On a population basis, that's everybody. And potentially decrease the need and or dose for lipid-lowering prescription drugs. Those are statins. The Cleveland Clinic told us 20-some years ago there was a solution, an all-natural plant-based solution. Why do you suppose you haven't heard of it? Now, let's just keep digging a little bit further, okay? We've talked about social validation. You saw Jennifer's touching story. That was amazing. She yanked a tear out of my eyeball. I bet she did out of yours too. So we've got social validation. We've got clinical validation by places like the Cleveland Clinic, UNLV, Stanford, the University of Sydney, Australia, BYU, Dr. Bickman himself. We've got all sorts of clinical validation. Now let's talk about the physician's desk reference, okay? Let's go here. The physician's desk reference, also known as the PDR. This is your doctor's go-to manual to tell them about the contraindications, the side effects, and that sort of thing on products, okay? Well, we could type into here things like, let's type into here, let's go with Ozempic. Let's just go there. Let's choose Ozempic, and it will bring up those medications. It's a little slow today. What can I say? Sooner or later, it will pull it up. And I encourage you, everybody, to do this. Oh, it will be under semaglutide. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go Lipitor. Let's go look at Lipitor. I just want to look at that. If I looked up semaglutide, we'd find what is going on here. I wonder if their website is down, and it may just be down right now. We'll see. I think their website is down. Okay, so that's disappointing because I was going to show a huge body of proof, but I can do it right here. The physician's desk reference. This is the good old-fashioned hardback copy of that website. And what you will find in here is balance. Balance. By the way, I didn't connect those dots well enough. BIOS life in certain regions of the world is called BIOS life. In North America, in Europe, it's called balance. They are one and the same. They are interchangeable. It's available in Saudi Arabia. It's available in South Korea. It's available all over the world. Okay. So in the physician's desk reference, you're going to find balance. You're going to find Unimate. You know what you won't find? Yerba mate, Lipton iced tea. You will not find those things in there because there's no clinical validation behind them. You will not find Metamucil in there. And that's always an interesting one because Metamucil is owned by Procter & Gamble. It's a $90 billion a year company. If Procter & Gamble wanted to, they could just buy the physician's desk reference. What they can't do is buy their product Metamucil into it. Balance and Unimate are both in there. In fact, Unicity has 19 separate products in there. It's not just these two. There's an amazing product line that's in there. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, so these products are also HSA and FSA approved. So you can use your health spending account and your flex spending account on them. Your health savings account and your flex spending account. You can use those funds on it. They accept Apple Pay, so you can use things like Klarna and PayPal. There are a ton of different options to use it. It breaks down to about $5.30 per day in the United States. It's available in 60 some countries globally. And so when you click on the link to order, it's a smart link. It will automatically convert to whatever country you're in. If you're in the United Kingdom, it's 145 quid. Just like that. It does it for you. Okay, so if you want to try these products, I also forgot to mention Dr. Ben Bickman is the director of the Scientific Advisory Board. If you want to try these products, simply get with the person who referred you to this live stream. They have a referral link, and they'll tell you how to order this. They will get a discount on their next order. That's how this thing works. They're using word of mouth. How many of you have seen that commercial for Giardians with the lady out there dancing? She's out there dancing in the sunshine because she gets to take Giardians. And every one of us saw that commercial and thought, boy, that's not real. That's not real. I don't believe people really dance because they get to take medications. It's a paid actor. What we're getting here are real life people who are saying, hey, this stuff has changed my life. I think it could benefit yours too. And they have referred you to me to listen to me talk for an hour and 15 minutes now. Get back with them, try the product. Here's the deal. Unicity offers a 90-day money-back guarantee. 90-day money-back guarantee. You literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain. If you feel like you are stuck, if you feel like you're helpless and hopeless, you don't have to be. Join this community and start feeling better. Unicity's motto is make life better. That's what we do. We make life better for people. We reach out and we help somebody else. And that's what the rest of this world should do. Okay. A final piece, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I guess, does anybody have any questions for me? Please feel free to ask questions. I love taking questions. Please feel free to ask questions. While we're doing that, I want to touch on something else. If I have said something throughout this live stream that struck you in a positive way, and you're saying, you know what, I want to be a part of that. I want to help with this. I want to help the mission. Let me just tell you, Dr. Bickman cites a study that shows that 88% of Americans are either metabolically dysfunctional, insulin resistant. They're 88% of Americans need this product. That's approximately 300 million Americans. And again, we're available in 60 some countries. The need is overwhelming. And I feel like I do a pretty dang good job, but I can't do it by myself. I need help. If you're looking for something that's noble, if you're looking for something that feels good, if you're looking to build a legacy thing for yourself, and you want to make an impact on the quality of somebody else's life, and you're interested in how this works, we do a referral program overview every Thursday night. Tomorrow night, just get with the person who invited you here tonight, and they will gladly share the link tomorrow. Apparently, I'm on stage tomorrow night. I'm going to be doing the presentation tomorrow night. I'm a little bit nervous about that, but hey, we'll see if I can do it. I think I can. But come and learn about that. We're looking for help. We would love to have you. We're looking for people of all different sizes and shapes and everything. We need help. There are 38 million Americans who are either diabetic, 98 million who are pre-diabetic, 74% of Americans are either overweight or obese. Heart disease is still the #1 cause of death in the United States. In fact, insulin resistance can easily be connected to 7 of the top 10 causes of death in the United States. This is a problem. This is a real problem, and we need your help to fix it. It doesn't look like I have any questions. I appreciate your time today. This is the best thing in the world. I will conclude with, if you've sat here and you are skeptical, if you've listened to me speak and you think, yeah, right, this is too good to be true. Yeah, right. I hear you. I see you. I felt the same way. I thought it was a gimmick, just like you probably do. The best part about this company is they offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. You literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Okay? Give the products a try. Be consistent. Thank you, Bambi. Thank you for listening. Give the products a try. Be consistent. Get with the person who invited you here. They will share their referral link, and they will also coach you through this. You're not going to travel this journey alone. And in fact, plug yourself into the community. You'll find a lot of like-minded people on this. Okay, you guys have a wonderful day. One final piece. I keep saying that. This will be the final piece. If you want to hear a doctor explain the things that I just explained, if you say, you know what, I don't know who this Yahoo is, I don't know who this Pitmaster dude is, I get it. Again, I hear you. If you want to hear a doctor say it, Dr. Dieter is doing a presentation tomorrow midday. He also does a presentation on Sundays and Monday evenings. Then we have a various slew of different medical professionals who do this on Tuesday night. So if you don't want to listen to some Yahoo like myself, you want to hear somebody with credentials talk about it, get with the person who invited you here, and they will provide those Zoom links for you so you can go be a fly on the wall in those meetings and hear a doctor talk about why these products work. You guys are amazing. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful week. I'll be back again, same time, same place, next Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on all the different platforms. Next week, do me a favor, and everybody that's listening, make it a thing that you're going to invite 5 people to next week's call, okay? Get 5 people to next week's call. Let's change the world. Have a wonderful week.